This will be the last video on listening tips, and I'm going to continue on with the final step of the listening process, our responses. And so here are some things that I think about when I'm trying to improve my response to the person that I'm listening to. One is that response happens throughout the listening process, and it is done non-verbally through various different types of what we call back channeling, messages that we send along a back channel rather than the main channel of conversation. And we want our regulators, which are nonverbals that regulate the conversation, we want those to be encouraging the other person to keep going and to indicate to them that we're still listening. And we want to give them immediacy behaviors that increase their sense of our closeness to them and our intimacy and liking of them. So we're going to use our posture, kind of sitting up straight. I try to make sure that I'm facing the people that I'm listening to, that I'm kind of leaning in towards them, and that I'm making eye contact with them while they're talking. And I'm encouraging them with my eye behavior to keep speaking. I'm going to smile and give them a positive facial expression and nod my head to encourage them to keep going. When it comes time to say something, I should be first focused on clarifications. And so I remind myself that it's okay to seek clarifications as I'm listening, but to not derail the person that's speaking by asking unnecessary questions. So sometimes when you're clarifying or seeking clarification, that can indicate to them that you care about what they're listening. So do that. Try to, when you're responding back to people, this has to do with that idea of summarizing we talked about in the last video. Just try to describe back to them what you heard them say and what you understood. So, I hear you saying that you're having a lot of problem with your partner and that their behavior is really causing you a lot of stress. Wow. Yeah, that must feel really difficult to deal with. So I'm just kind of saying back to them what I heard them say, and that's going to help me recall, and it's also going to confirm to them that you're listening and offer them affirmation that you understand kind of where they're coming from, and we can even go to the level of offering them support with our response. So this is particularly good for empathetic listening. Another way we can confirm, affirm, and support the person that we're listening to is with keeping in mind a little game that I learned when I was on an improv comedy troupe. And I don't want you to literally play this game with folks, but think about this more as an attitude that you can adopt when you are responding to what other people are saying. People don't like it when you're contradictory, and people don't like it when you disconfirm them. And the same goes in improv comedy. There's a very common mistake that rookie improvisational comedic actors do, where they disconfirm or they immediately contradict what somebody else said. So I say, I'm feeling really tired after school today, and the other person says, "What? You're not in school?" Okay, that's really frustrating. So a better response for good theater would be for that person to say something more affirming of what, yes, you went to school today and you forgot your lunch. Okay, so it's turning it from no but to a yes and statement. And so I want you to think about that when people are speaking to you. Try to affirm with saying yes, and say back to them what you hear them saying. So an example of this might be, let's say you're watching sports and one of your friends says, a good defense is going to be the key to victory here. You could disconfirm them and contradict them right away if you want, I suppose. But a more supportive way to listen would be to say something along the lines of, yeah, a good defense could be the key to victory here. And I also think coaching is quite important too. And so you're saying yes, and you're affirming what they're saying, and then you're adding to the conversation with the and. So that's just a little example of that. But I think trying to avoid the attitude of immediately saying no but to people is a good way to become a better listener, and will encourage them to kind of share more and talk more with you. Even if you disagree, you can still say, yes, I see what you're saying here. And there's this other way of seeing things too. As you're listening to the other person, the last thing I want to leave you with is just the value of asking open-ended questions. And I have the compulsion to kind of tell my story or give my thoughts on what other people are saying. I used to watch my ex, my ex-partner, and they would interview people for hours at a time, one question after the other, and these folks would just keep talking, and they had such affection for my partner because my partner gave them space to kind of share and talk. So I would consider the value of kind of just being quiet and practicing this in your social situations, where you listen and you ask open-ended questions to what people are saying and encourage them to keep talking. How did that feel? So what happened next? What did you learn from that? So try to ask more questions than make statements, and see what happens in your conversations. And of course, remember all these tips, and hopefully your listening will be improved and your relationships will also be improved.